was an orphan to suicide. I was a devout atheist. I was a drug addict. I was a prostitute. I'm a liar, a manipulator, a thief. And after my experience, it was like every cell in my body absolutely demanded to transform 180 degrees. And all the things that I was doing in my life before, none of them worked anymore.
Today's guest is Betty Guadagno, who shares her near-death and spiritually awakened experience. Prior to Betty's awakening, she was addicted to drugs, she was a sex worker, an atheist with no direction in life. However, this all changed in March of 2019. Betty is now a spokesperson for the International Association for Near-Death Studies, also known as IANS, and she also has her very own podcast here on YouTube, which I will link below. But more importantly, Betty is now a recovery coach for those who once walked in her shoes. So guys, I give you a very warm welcome to Betty Guadagno.
Hello, my name's Betty Guadagno, and I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening in March of 2019. It was a near-death-like experience. In my awakening, I was transported to the space of eternity, the same space that near-death experiencers describe. And when I was in my experience, I was taken through my pre-birth planning. So how some people believe in an afterlife, I was shown my life before life. And it gave me a lot of answers to a lot of the things that I had experienced in my life. Before my experience, my world was full of a lot of darkness and despair, a lot of trauma, a lot of tragedy. I lost my parents when I was 23 to a double suicide. That event in my life was just so hugely traumatic. And it bonded me to drugs and alcohol in this very severe way because I just could not cope with what my life was. And so I was grabbing at anything that I could to not feel, whether it was an outside substance, whether it was a man, whether it was a relationship or food or binge watching TV, anything that I could get my hands on just to not feel what my experience was. And then I had this very profound spiritual transformation that turned my life upside down 180 degrees and put me onto a totally different path. So my awakening was the result of a drug overdose. I overdosed on hallucinogens. Didn't think that was possible. Me neither. It was a real surprise. And yeah, so throughout my experience, I just kept thinking that it was drug-induced psychosis because all I knew was that I took a bunch of drugs and then I thought I was talking to God. So I was like, wow, this is crazy. I broke my brain. And it wasn't until the after effects that I realized that this was a true spiritual experience that had happened to me. I'm going to walk you through what it looked like, what the actual experience looked like. So I had taken this overdose of hallucinogens to go do my laundry because that's the kind of life that I was living. I was like, I might as well be wavy for some mundane human task. And so I went to the laundromat, and that's when the awakening really started to take place. And Kundalini energy is described as life force energy. So this was the first time that my spirit was actually coming alive. And the way that it activated inside my body was that my 7 chakra systems that you'll see depicted a lot in the spiritual community, they all got activated and awoken at the exact same moment. So I had this rush of energy going up and down my spine. It was actually causing me to pee all over myself. So half of my awakening was spent on the toilet, which is a funny thing to say. So my awakening was taking place inside the laundromat. I realized something was happening. I rushed home, but it felt like I was stuck inside this loop. I kept seeing the same street signs over and over again. Like I'd run to the corner and it would say Madison and Stuyvesant. And then I'd run to the next corner and it would say Madison and Stuyvesant again. And then the whole world got washed in the brightest white light that I've ever seen. And then all of the buildings around me crumbled to the ground, and all that was left of them was the green lines of matrix code that make them up. So my whole reality was crashing in front of my eyes. I run back to my house. I finally get there. I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and I have no idea who I am. And I said out loud, "Who is that?" And I said, "What are we doing inside of our daughter?" And I felt my mother and my father's spirit come inside my consciousness, and they were having a conversation trying to figure out how they were seeing things through my eyes, which is why I couldn't recognize myself. So everything is like melding together. I'm starting to feel the whole universe come into my little pea-sized brain all at once, and it cracked me open. So as this energy was rushing up and down me, as my third eye and my crown opened, it felt like my spirit left my body. And I found myself on this journey into heaven. And this masculine voice had guided me through, this voice that I perceive as the man who is my twin flame, which might just be some psychotic obsession that I have with a stranger. I don't know. But his voice guided me through the experience, and it took me into the space of heaven. So while I was there, that masculine voice turned into every masculine voice I've ever encountered, including loved ones I had passed over. So my father was there. I had a boyfriend who had passed away a few years before. He was there. They guided me through, and they told me that I was a spiritual soldier and that I was here on earth with a divine mission to uplift the consciousness of the planet, and that I had to go back for the next part of my mission. They told me that this was just boot camp, the first half of my life, and now I had to go back to carry out the rest. And I was like, "Oh my God, cool story. No, thanks. I'm not going back." And they were like, "Come on, like this is what you signed up for." And I was like, "No, you know what? I'm going to go grab my PJs, a bowl of popcorn. I'm going to watch the show from up here. It's going to be awesome. I know it, but I'm definitely not going back." And then they took me through every aspect of my pre-birth plan so that I could see why I had chosen the things that I had chosen and what was going to happen in my life after this spiritual experience. So the way that I perceived it was a lot like a video game. There was this man, he was guiding me. He was wearing a plaid blazer and a fedora. He had an empty grocery cart, and he told me to pick my life. And so we ended up, it looked like a grocery store. It looked like these big cereal boxes along the wall, and each cereal box had an experience inside of it. And so I could perceive myself just as a spirit, like this little orb of light. And I was like bouncing up and down, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to Earth. Yeah, I'm going to Earth." And so I start grabbing all of these cereal boxes. I'm just like, every experience. I want to be an addict. I want to experience, like loss, suicide, like just really deep, dark trauma, all of these boxes. And then I see that I'm picking boxes of things that I have not yet experienced in my human life. So I see recovery, I see overcoming, I see motivational speaking, I see being an author, I see all these things, but none of that stuff has happened in my life yet. So I see the reason why I pick them, the experiences. I feel the feelings that I'll feel on earth, but I only feel them for like a brief moment. Like I pick up a box and I say, "Oh, that's what a loss of suicide feels like. I can handle that." And I put it in the cart, not realizing that I'll have to deal with that feeling for, like years and years. In heaven, it just feels like a second, like it's like one little blip of nothing. So I put all these experiences in the cart, and I'm downloaded with this whole story, and I understand, and I tell them that I understand, and I say, "I'm still not going back. I get it. I picked the life. I'm a divine co-creator. I'm no longer a victim to my circumstance. That is all wonderful. Thank you for releasing the bondage from my past from me, but I do not want to go back." And I sort of transformed into a small child, and I was like kicking my feet and stomping my hands on the ground. "I will not go back. You cannot make me go back." And then I had a thought, and I said, "I definitely cannot go back into her. She is glitched. She needs way too much healing. She is a lost cause. I will not go back into her." And they said, "Okay, you don't have to go back into her, but you do have to go back. And so we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into." And so then they showed me the baby, and they showed me everything about her. She was beautiful. They showed me her gender, her ethnicity, where she would be born, her challenges in life, her purpose, her mission, her parents, everything, all of these stats around this baby. The thing is that I hadn't balanced this life yet. So I was going to have to come back into form and experience all the same things over again so that I could balance them and balance out the cart. I had to get to the light side of the cart, but I would now have to go back through the darkness again. And I threw my hands up in the air and I said, oh, there's no way that I can start from zero. I guess I'll go back into her. And I sort of found myself sifting back into my awareness, and they promised me, they said, your life will not be nearly as challenging as it was before. Trust us. And I just remember saying, I do not trust you. And I found myself back in my body. And, I went about my life. I just wrote the whole thing off as a hallucination. I was like, whoa, that was crazy. That was so weird. I didn't know anything about spirituality. I didn't know anything about souls, or I didn't believe in any of that. So there was no way that I was going to buy into anything that had just happened. And I just kept using, and I kept living my life that way. And then my mission took over. I mean, like my guides, my team, the people that I was talking to in eternity, they said, hey, listen, we told you that you had to get onto a different path. And if you're not going to listen to us, then we're going to make it impossible for you to keep living your life the way that you are. It's time for the next part of the mission. And so all of these divine synchronicities were taking place in my life. Like all the drug dealers that I had been dealing with for over a decade, all simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling drugs. I'm talking about people that did not know each other. I would call up a dealer. I'd be like, hey man, what's good? He'd be like, listen, I found Jesus. I want to be a good father. I'm out of the game. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Click. I'd call another guy. Same identical story, but these two men did not know each other. And it just kept happening over and over and over again. And so now I had no way to get my substances. And so I found myself in the grips of heroin withdrawal. I was addicted to opiates for over 20 years. And, I was so sick. I mean, I was sicker than I had ever been in my 20 plus years of using opiates. And I had a thought and I said, man, I couldn't even kill myself if I wanted to, because I'm so sick that I can't even get up out of bed to figure out a way to kill myself. And right then I heard this voice and it told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And I was in the throes of desperation. So I was like, okay, strange voice, I believe you. And I was very, very specific about what I wanted fixed. I said I wanted my pain receptors and my neurotransmitters fixed, that I wanted to no longer be physically dependent on heroin. I didn't say that I wanted to be rid of my addiction, because I still definitely wanted to use other substances. I just didn't want to be physically tethered to this one substance that had a physical dependency to it. And so the voice told me to close my eyes and count backwards from 10. And I saw these two little men manifest in my mind's eye, and they were wearing white lab coats. And then these little lawnmowers manifested in front of them. And so they were kind of hopping up and down with the lawnmowers. And I watched them walk through every crevice of my mind in opposite directions. And as they walked through the crevices of my mind, I felt these intense hot tingles. And I just knew that something magical was taking place. And after they were finished going through the map of my mind, it felt like somebody was drawing X's on my forehead, which might be reminiscent of the crown of thorns. I still don't really know what that was, but it's very pronounced in my memory that there was X's across my forehead, and then a plunger plunged down. When it came up on the crown of my head, it was this huge white flash. And in that moment, I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of heroin withdrawal. I mean, like moments before, I was sick all over myself, vomiting. My skin felt like it was on fire. My bones felt like they were turning into liquid inside me, hot and cold and sweating. And I mean, it was agony, just the worst agony. And then all of a sudden I was completely fine. I jumped out of bed. I was screaming and crying in praise. I couldn't believe what had just happened to me. And in this moment, I knew that the spiritual experience that I had had on my overdose was not some sort of drug-induced hallucination. It was an actual real experience. And so my path became crystal clear after that. Well, I mean, it didn't become crystal clear. I guess I shouldn't put it that way, but I felt like I felt such urgency. Everything felt so urgent. Like, oh my God, everyone has to know that God exists and that God heals. And, all of like this, I kept going up to strangers on the street and I was trying to lay hands on them and heal them out of their addictions and their homelessness. And it was insane. But I knew that something magical had happened and I wanted to share about it. And I found myself on a train. I had no destination, and this man appeared across from me, and he was wearing a 12-step fellowship necklace. And I heard a voice, and it said, "That's your path. Follow him to a meeting." And that was on June 1st, 2019, which was about 2.5 months after my experience. But ever since that day in June, I've been clean and sober, and I've never used a substance again. And, so like, it was very divine that man happened to be on that train. And today I wear my own 12-step necklace, just in case I'm supposed to be that angel for somebody on the train. And, I went to a couple more meetings over the next couple days, and I just realized that I was walking on quicksand. I had no idea what had happened to me. I had no language. I had no resources. And on top of that, I was trying to heal from my addictions, these addictions that I had had throughout my entire adolescence and adult life. So I found myself in a meeting. It was a big, huge meeting, like 60, 70 people. And I had a thought, and I said, I don't know how to be a person. Nobody ever taught me. I come from a family of addicts. The only thing that we're taught in our family is how to use. And so I just really had no clue. I mean, I was the kind of addict that I couldn't even take a shower without being high first. And so this was going to be like a whole undertaking. So I'm in this meeting and I have this thought, and then I hear a voice and it tells me to turn my head to the right. And I realize that sitting 2 seats away from me is the program director of a long-term therapeutic community, a long-term rehab here in Brooklyn where I live. So I just had a thought, I don't know how to be a person. And then I'm sitting right next to a woman whose life's purpose, passion, and profession is teaching women how to be women again after the use of drugs and alcohol. So I knew that it was another divine sign, but I didn't know how to ask her for help because I just didn't know how to do that at all. And so the whole meeting, I'm like trying to like hype myself up. I'm like, come on, you could do this. I'm like punching the air. I'm like doing flips inside my mind. I'm like, you're going to have a new life. You can ask this woman for help. You can do it. And so the meeting ends and I'm all hyped up. And so I walk over to where she is, and she was gone. She left the meeting early, and I felt totally defeated. So with my head hanging, I walked to the bus to go home. And when I stepped onto the bus, that woman was sitting right there. She left the meeting early and was somehow on the exact same bus as me. And I ran up to her totally insane and manic. I was like, oh my God, this is totally divine. I want to talk to you inside, but you're already gone. Now here you are. This is a miracle. I think you're to earth. I think that you're supposed to help me. Can you help me? Please, 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 please. And she looked at me so calm and she said, we can help you. We have a bed. Come by tomorrow. And that sentence changed my whole life without my permission. And, it really isn't something that I wanted to do. I did not want to let go of my life. It's the only life I ever knew. It was not a great life. It was full of a lot of darkness, but I was so comfortable in my discomfort, and just to tell myself that you have to get completely out of your comfort zone. You're going into a whole nother dimension, a whole nother universe. It was so scary. But I knew that I was divinely guided. Like it really felt like there was a hand on my back pushing me through the doors of the rehab. And I started my journey, and it was a long-term program. I ended up staying there for 17 months. I know, totally psychotic, crazy. I needed a lot of space and time, not only away from substances, not only away from people, places, and things, but I also needed to figure out how to integrate my spiritual experience. And I'm glad that I'm somewhere safe, like a rehab, to do that, because I was able to make a lot of mistakes, and there wasn't like outward repercussions really, because it was safe inside this kind of like, this house. I was there with 25 other women. And let me tell you, trying to heal with 25 other women is not sexy pajama parties and pillow fights. It is serious strife. Okay. It was hardcore. I don't know how I made it out alive. But I saw a lot of reflections of myself there, a lot of my own trauma, a lot of healing that I had to do. And while I was there, I had this insatiable thirst for knowledge. I read every sacred text. I read everything I could get my hands on about metaphysics and the law of attraction. I didn't have access to my cell phone or the internet for a year and a half. And so everything I learned, I read out of books. I felt like a caveman. I was like, how do people learn like this? But I did. I learned a lot. And yeah, like some of the teachings that I learned inside that facility, I still keep in my life today. I study A Course in Miracles, which is a metaphysical text channeled by Jesus. It's a different way of life. It's a reprogramming, and I use it daily in my life. I also study the Baha'i faith. And yeah, I belong to 12-step fellowship to deal with my issues surrounding addiction. And now I belong to a group for near-death experiencers and spiritual experiencers on the IANS platform, which is the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And now I actually work in service for IANS as well. I'm their webinar coordinator. I host a podcast for them. While I was in that program, I got an opportunity to go to school. I became a peer advocate. I have a job as a peer counselor in the recovery field, which is such a wild sentence to say. I never would have thought ever that I would be doing something that I would have a career of service. In my life, not only had I endured a lot of trauma and tragedy, but I inflicted a lot of trauma and tragedy onto other people. Like, I am not the victim of my circumstance. I was the perpetrator in many people's storylines. And today I have this amazing opportunity to make a universal amends. And I assist people on their healing journeys in recovery. I hold space for people to share about their spiritual experiences. My life is so involved with community and with service. And because of that, magic manifests in my life. Like, for the contrast of who I was before my experience, I mean, honestly, there's no words in the human language to explain to you what kind of depraved animal I was on before my spiritual experience, but it's not the person that's sitting here today. I was an orphan to suicide. I was a devout atheist. I was a drug addict. I was a prostitute. I was, a liar, a manipulator, a thief. And after my experience, it was like every cell in my body absolutely demanded to transform 180 degrees. And all the things that I was doing in my life before, none of them worked anymore.
So all of the things that you had, you pretty much dived into a deep pool of sin in a way. You were a drug addict, a liar, a thief, sorry. When you were on the other side, did you ever feel judged, or did you feel loved?
Oh my goodness, I love that question. Thank you. And thank you for stopping me from rambling. That was a lot. Yeah. So no judgment, no condemnation. And that's really the beautiful message of what I bring back with me. Like, if somebody like that could experience the unconditional love and grace of the divine, then anybody can. And that means people who cause more harm than me, people who cause less harm than me. Like, when I made it to heaven, it really felt like I woke up from a dream. And I couldn't even remember any of my life. The only thing that I could remember was that my parents had committed suicide. So 35 years of life was boiled down to one 3-second thought. And it just felt like, whoa, that was such a weird dream. And then I was like, wait, what was the dream? That's really what it felt like there. And so there was no condemnation, no judgment. The only judgment is that of grace. That's the only true judgment that I experienced.
Yeah. It's crazy that you mentioned that this is the dream, that's reality. It would make one think, what happens when we sleep? Where do we go at night when we're asleep? Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so it's really amazing to think about that. I can't wrap my head around that, because many near-death experiences also say the same thing. It's more real there than it is here. And that leads me into my next question, which I do ask a lot. Do you also agree that this here is a simulation?
Yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. This is Sims Earth. Okay. This is my 3D avatar that I've chosen for myself. And yeah, and so much of it is like a video game, right? And it really helps me to compute things that way. So I have a sim creator, my higher self. My higher self created this 3D avatar and has decided to experience certain things. Now, the 3D avatar, the human, I forgot that I'm inside of a game. I think that I'm actually living in real reality. And so, like, I'm this method actor. I'm this, like, I get really into my character that I'm playing in the game. Like, I want to experience every emotion to its fullest. I have a better line than my sim creator does. Like, I want to rule the scene. I want a different partner, like for the, like my co-star, all of these different things. But yeah, I totally believe that we're in a simulation, 1,000%. And there's multiple simulations, infinite simulations happening all simultaneously.
What I would like to ask is, how do you think, or what sort of guidance could you give us to follow the higher self guidance that you now follow?
Oof. Okay. Well, I don't follow it all the time. Let's not get it twisted. There's many times when I take my own will back because, again, I think that I know how to play the scene better. Um, so some of the things that I do to tap into my higher self is I eat clean, I drink a lot of water, I move my body, and I'm of service to the collective and my communities. And those are not crazy things, right? That's just a couple of simple little hacks that I use to vibrate a little bit higher. I have like a very minimal meditation practice. I do 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night. I do a lot of affirmation. I do a lot of visualization and intention setting. And yeah, like those are the things that I do to connect. And I'm just open. I'm open
Yeah.
minded. I practice that spiritual principle of open mindedness all the time. I exercise it all the time because if I'm open minded, then like literally anything can happen in my life if I just remain open to it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That's amazing. I do want to switch gears just a little bit. I want to take you back to your, would you call it life review? Um, so when your parents were sort of inside your body and viewing through your eyes, would you say that because on the other side time doesn't exist, that you were all simultaneously experiencing the same thing and their life review was actually through you as you were going through your own?
Ooh, I love this. Yes. And I didn't even really touch on that, but that is really what happened. Like it's so interesting when we come, like people who have these spiritual experiences, we come and we tell a story, right? And we get it down to like this 20-minute share. But really, this story is like, it's hours and hours and hours of information. So yeah, that is exactly what happened. I felt like I was experiencing not only my parents, but like every person that I've ever encountered, and even people that I never, like, I felt what Hitler experienced. I felt what
Yeah.
Jesus experienced. I felt all of these different entities. It was like every emotion flooding me all at once. It was like just the most intense wave of like, it just felt like spiritual nausea. Like it was everything downloaded all at once. It was so hard to filter through. But yeah, like I felt things from both ends, especially with my parents' death. I felt it from my perspective, what it felt like as a child to lose them. And then I also felt it from their perspective, the agony and the despair that they were feeling together at the time of their decision. And
Mm.
then yeah, like the aftermath of making the decision. And it was, yeah, very intense. So complex.
And the beings that you saw on the other side, or the guides, could you describe to us what they look like?
So nothing really had any physical sight for me there. I saw a lot of stuff in my mind's eye. Like I shared the guy with the fedora that guided me through the grocery store. The beings, I assume, I mean, they didn't tell me who they are, but just like through my own research, we got a lot of information in our collective about the Council of Light, the beings of light. That's what it felt like. So it was kind of this table. There was not really a lot of form, but it did look like sort of light bodies. And they had this big, huge book, and they were just thumbing through the book, and they were like, nope, you're not done yet. You have to go back. This is not finished. And it kind of, I still haven't found great language for it, but I like saying it like this. It felt like a jury, but without condemnation, like no negative, like no negative aspect to it. But it did feel like people that were in charge, like they were in charge of me being able to stay or go. And yeah, there was just no way for me to convince them. And I was a master manipulator in my human life. So I was like, what do I have to do to make you let me stay?
And also with, when you were healed as well, is there any other things that you've asked to be changed? Is that something that you can still do?
Oh man, you know what? I've never been in a situation where I was in that amount of desperation. The healing that took place in my life, that was the gift of desperation. The acronym God, God, right? Like I was in the pit of despair. And so it really felt like that was a moment of mental suicide or spiritual suicide, or maybe in an alternate reality, it was actually a physical suicide. And that's how I could experience the healing. Maybe I did die in that moment. I don't know. Like when you get around the idea of infinity and multiverses and alternate realities and all these different simulations happening at the same time. But I will say that I've never been in a place of desperation like that before. I've had amazing miracles manifest in my life since then, but nothing where I ever felt like, I need a shift like that.
Yeah, yeah. And some things that you learnt when you were in rehab, would you be able to share with us some of the things that has changed your life or your views of life from some of the things that you read about?
Sure, yeah. So many of the sacred texts spoke to me in such divine ways. Again, I study A Course in Miracles, and in A Course in Miracles, it teaches that this world is not real. This is an illusion, and this is the dream. So in the dream, it can either be a nightmare or you can transform it into the happy dream. And so that's what my process has been like since coming into awareness, is transforming my nightmare into the happy dream. And it doesn't mean it happens all the time. I still have my moments, like this is the duality of being a human, of course, or I think it is anyway. And so that's my reality. That's been one of like the main teachings. It tells me that I'm not a body, that I'm actually a divine spirit, and that like I don't have to take it so seriously here. I still do, but I don't have to if I don't want to. And some of the other things that I learned inside of my integration process was about the law of attraction, that my thoughts really do shape my reality. So for instance, my thoughts before my awakening were, I'm impoverished, I'm homeless, I'm a drug addict, I'm a sex worker. And so my reality reflected that, because those were my thoughts about myself. And so now I choose different thoughts. I have a beautiful home. I am an abundant individual. I am in recovery. I have a career in the recovery field. And because my thoughts have changed, my circumstances changed. So really, our thoughts really do shape our reality. And it seems like such a simple principle, like, okay, now I know that. And so everything can change. So I'm a lot more conscious of my thoughts today.
And so that's why you do affirmations, right?
Yeah. Yes. I speak things as if they're already happening. Because like if I say I want, I'm affirming that I don't have. So the universe doesn't know the difference. So if I say I want a new car, the universe just hears she doesn't have a car.
Yeah.
And it'll keep doing that, So instead I affirm that it's already in the present tense. And all I have to do is just switch streams of consciousness to get over to what it is that I desire.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I feel it's really important today more than ever to share all of these different, pathways of information so that we can learn to change our own thoughts. Because I don't know about you, but since my awakening, I feel like everyone are like robots now. They're all following the same path, right? I don't know if you've noticed that at all. And so I just want to shake people and say, change your thought patterns. There's so much more life out there to explore. So I just love sharing these messages.
Yes, I love that as well. And yeah, like I felt the same way in the beginning after my experience. I felt like nobody understood me. Everybody was asleep. I dealt with a lot of self-righteousness with myself. And like now I think of it this way, like how would you like to be woken up from actual sleeping? Would you want somebody
Mm.
yelling in your face that you're stupid and asleep and why are you sleeping? Or would you want something more gentle and compassionate, like a soft nudge? And so, and also, for me, I thought in the beginning that it was really about changing people's minds
Mm.
and teaching and preaching and proselytizing. And I thought that that was the path. But I realize now, after integrating the experience, that everything is always working in divine right order. I don't have to do anything. I mean, like, I love sharing my story. I love connecting with other people, but that's not always my purpose. Like sometimes it's just to sit and hold space and just to be a shining testimony. And so as I start to live my life in a more righteous way, people are curious. They're like, how did you go from that to this? Like, what do you do? I'd like to know. And I wait for people to come to me now instead of trying to like shove it down their throats, because they're going to get awoken when they've planned to be awoken. And there's really not much else that any of us can do about it.
And I do have to say, you look absolutely amazing. So, congratulations to you. And I would like to take the time to thank you for the work that you do for others who were once in your shoes, right? So, it's so beautiful, the way things have worked out for you. And another question that I would like to ask is, do you think it's possible that you were supposed to go through all of this pain in order to bring the light to those who need it more?
Oh yes. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Like, yeah, they say in 12-step fellowship, like the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. And for me, having this lived experience and being able to show other people who are really in the grips of their addiction that if there's hope for me, there's got to be hope for you, because I was hopeless, helpless, homeless, like just completely desperate. And
Mm.
I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for every experience in my life, all of the darkness, all of the depravity, all of the times where I was the abuser. Like, and I have some freedom in my life around it today because I practice spiritual principles. I work the 12 steps. I do the
Mm.
workbook lessons in A Course in Miracles. And I have this download of this pre-birth plan. And so for me, my past doesn't hold any bondage over my present or my future, which is really such a beautiful gift to be able to show others. Like, hey, I can tell you who I was before because I know that I'm not that person anymore.
And from your experience, I know you probably get asked this quite a lot, as many near-death experiences do. Did you come back with any supernatural abilities that you didn't once have before?
Yes. So when I first came back from my experience, I practiced the art of bibliomancy. Don't know what that is? Let me tell you. So bibliomancy is where you open up a book to a random page and it speaks directly to you. So lots of people use this tool in their spiritual development, but there's actually a name for it. It's called bibliomancy. So when I first came up upon this gift, not only could I open up a book to a random page and it would speak to me, but it was also highlighted with a light box that was just around my eyes. Like there was no actual highlight in the book, but in my mind's eye, it would be highlighted exactly what I was supposed to read. So that was a really cool spiritual gift. It scared the life out of me. So I asked to have all of my gifts turned down. My senses were all intertwined. Like I could, yeah, like I could see, like I could taste texture. Like I had synesthesia for a little while after my experience. Like every number had a color, like just weird things were all sort of intertwining. And, I could really read people's energy. I could really read their truth, like these deep underlying like lies that they were living with. And I was just going up to random people on the street and being like, you need to tell your family, like you have to tell your wife that you're cheating on her, you're living a lie. And people would be like, what is up with you? I don't know if I was right or not, but I felt like I knew something very deep. But yeah, like I asked to have a lot of my supernatural gifts turned down because they were really, it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's like you opened a door to senses that we weren't taught about or that we even knew existed. So it's quite scary, I could imagine.
Yeah.
And for yourself, for the work that you do, how can the viewers watching here who may know someone struggling, or that they themselves may be suffering, how can they find you?
Yes. So I have a YouTube, I have an Instagram, a Facebook. My handle is Buddha Betty. On all of those platforms. There'll be links in the description as well. And this really feels like my purpose is to not only assist people in standing bravely in their spiritual truth, but also assisting people in finding recovery. Because there's this huge, beautiful community of recovery just waiting for you to help you.
Oh, beautiful. And one last thing. So for those watching, what sort of message would you give those from it, from your experience as a takeaway?
Yeah, from my experience, like I said, everything is always working in divine right order, even when my human mind can't see how that's even possible. And and Wayne Dyer has this great quote. It's when I believe it, I'll see it. And that, I mean, nothing has been more true in my experience, that if I open up to a new belief, I will see tangible evidence of it all around me. It's magical.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you again for joining the podcast. And I wish you massive success on your upcoming book that you saw in your life review. And yeah, I just can't wait to see how your life pans out now with everything going on with you. I just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do for the collective. So grateful for you.
Thank you.